Family didn't invite me to Christmas because it's no place for losers, my sister said. I calmly agreed and stopped funding her children and husband. Now she's going crazy. I was actually looking forward to Christmas this year. For once, I wasn't scrambling at the last minute to get everything together. By the first week of December, I bought presents for everyone, my parents, my sister Jacqueline, her husband Kevin, and their kids. I even bought extra, just in case anyone brought unexpected guests. I don't know. I just felt like this year was going to be good. So I was completely blindsided when, as I stood on my parents' front porch with a bag of wrapped presents in each hand, my dad opened the door and said, "We don't want you here this year." At first, I thought it was some kind of weird joke. I started to laugh a little, but then Jacqueline's voice cut in from behind him. "This is no place for losers," she said. "You were really starting to wear on all of us." I just stood there, staring at them. My mom was in the background, not saying a word, just looking awkwardly everywhere but at me. My dad looked uncomfortable but didn't back away. And Jacqueline? Jacqueline looked downright smug. I felt this onslaught of emotions, confusion, anger, embarrassment, but somehow I stayed calm. I just nodded, said, "Fine, if that's how you feel," and walked back to my car. But as I sat there in the driveway, staring at the bags of presents in the passenger seat, something inside me changed. No place for losers? Tired of me? Where was this coming from? I had a pretty good idea Jacqueline was behind it, but I couldn't figure out why. I'd been nothing but generous to her and her family over the years. I'd helped pay for her kids' school supplies, covered their summer camp fees, even pitched in on their mortgage when things got tight. And now, out of the blue, I'm not welcome at Christmas. I decided I wasn't going to leave just yet. I was going back to the door to get some answers. I left the presents in the car and went back to the door. My parents were still standing there, whispering to each other as if they hadn't expected me back. Jacqueline was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone, acting as if nothing had just happened. I didn't bother to knock. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping inside. "Why am I not welcome at Christmas? What did I do?" Jacqueline grinned without even looking up from her phone. "You really don't get it, do you? You've been slacking off lately. The kids have barely gotten anything from you this year." I stared at her, stunned. "What are you talking about? I've spent $100 on presents for your kids. They have more presents in the car than anyone else." Jacqueline finally looked at me. "Last year you did more. This year it's like you don't care. It's embarrassing for us, honestly." I turned to my parents, expecting them to say something. Maybe defend me or tell Jacqueline she was out of line. Instead, my dad gave me this awkward smile and said, "But you just bought a new car." For a second, I didn't even know how to respond. "The car is on credit," I said, keeping my voice steady. "And even if it wasn't, how does buying a car suddenly make me responsible for Jacqueline's kids?" "They're not my responsibility." "You're the one who makes the most money," Jacqueline said, leaning back on the couch as if this was all perfectly reasonable. "We're a family. Families help each other. You've always done that." I looked at Kevin, her husband, who was sitting quietly in the corner. He hadn't said a word, but his face was flushed, and he was staring down at his hands. He looked as if he wanted to disappear. "Is that your reasoning?" I asked. "Because I've been generous in the past, I'm now obligated to do so forever? And if I don't, I'm a loser?" Jacqueline shrugged. "If the shoe fits." That was it for me. I took a step back and shook my head. "You know what? You're right. I don't belong here." I looked at my parents. "Enjoy your Christmas." Then I turned to Jacqueline. "And good luck with those presents. Because this loser is done financing your life." I walked out without waiting for an answer. I drove home in silence, gripping the wheel harder than I needed to. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Was I really the bad guy here? I'd gone above and beyond for my family for years. Always stepping up when things got tough for Jacqueline. Making sure her kids never felt the pinch of her financial struggles. And now, not only was I not welcome at Christmas, I was a loser for not doing enough. When I got home, I sat in the driveway for a while, staring at nothing. The bag of presents was still in the car, and the sight of them made me sick to my stomach. I'd spent weeks picking out just the right things, thinking about what the kids would love, what my parents would appreciate. And for what? To be told I didn't belong? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about Christmas or presents. This had been building for years. And I'd been too blind, or maybe too willing, to see it. The truth was, I'd always been the one Jacqueline leaned on. When she and Kevin were first married, they got off to a rocky start financially. She wasn't great at holding down a steady job, and Kevin's part-time work barely covered the basics. I'd stepped in to help, thinking it would just be for a little while. A couple hundred here, a couple hundred there. I helped with rent once when they were facing eviction, then later with daycare when their second child was born. But a little while turned into years. Every time Jacqueline hit a rough patch, the first thing she did was call me. And to be honest, I always said yes. Not because I had to, but because I cared about her children. I didn't want them to go without, and I didn't want to see my sister and her family struggle. Looking back now, I realized that I'd created this dynamic. I made it too easy for Jacqueline to rely on me. And somewhere along the way, it stopped being gratitude and turned into entitlement. And tonight, being shut out of my own family's Christmas because I didn't do enough? That was the breaking point. The next morning, I woke up with a clearer head and made a decision. I was done. No more bailing Jacqueline out. No more endless gifts to make up for her lack of effort. If she wanted her kids to have the things I'd provided, she could figure it out for herself. It wasn't an easy decision. Cutting off my sister didn't just mean cutting off financial support. It meant risking my relationship with her children, and maybe even with my parents. But I couldn't go on being treated like an ATM instead of a sister and a daughter. I didn't reach out to anyone, and they didn't reach out to me. I thought maybe they got the message. But I should have known Jacqueline wouldn't let it go that easily. The silence stretched through New Year's Eve. No phone calls, no texts, nothing. I didn't hear from my parents, Jacqueline, or even Kevin. For the first time in years, I spent the holidays completely alone. It wasn't that I expected them to reach out, but it was a different feeling when midnight came and went and my phone remained silent. I won't lie, part of me thought about calling. But every time I picked up the phone, I remembered Jacqueline's smirk, her words. No place for losers. I'd been the one holding things together for years, and they had the audacity to treat me like I was disposable? No. If they wanted distance, I'd give it to them. By mid-January, I began to feel the change. Kevin had always been quiet, the kind of person who avoided conflict. But one night I got a text from him out of the blue. It was short and to the point. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I don't agree with what happened. Jacqueline won't hear it from me, but I thought you should know. I sat staring at my phone for a long time. Not sure how to respond. On the one hand, it felt good to know that someone in the family saw things for what they were. On the other hand, Kevin had been silent that night, and his apology now felt like too little, too late. I finally replied, I appreciate it, Kevin. But this isn't something I can just move on from. He didn't push the conversation further, and that was fine with me. Then, in early February, Jacqueline showed up at my house unannounced. I was in the middle of a work meeting when I heard the knock on the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I ignored it at first. But the knocking didn't stop. When I finally opened the door, there she was, Jacqueline, looking more disheveled and frustrated than I'd ever seen her. We need to talk, she said, stepping inside before I could stop her. I crossed my arms. What's this about? She got right to the point. You need to stop acting like this and start helping out again. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I couldn't believe she meant it. Helping out? You mean pay for your life? I told you, I'm done with that. She glared at me. You're the one with the money. Do you know how hard it's been for us since you decided to act like this? The kids barely have what they need. Kevin's trying to keep it together, but we can't do it without your help. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Are you listening to yourself right now? You're a grown woman, Jacqueline. You have a husband and children. If you need more money, go out and earn it. It's not my job to solve your problems. You've always helped before, she shot back. Why are you being so selfish now? Selfish? I repeated. You want to talk about being selfish? Let's talk about how you lied to our parents about me, turned them against me, and then banned me from Christmas because I didn't spend enough on your kids. And now you're here asking for more? You've got some nerve, Jacqueline. She started to say something else, but I held up a hand to stop her. We're done here. I'm not giving you another dime, and I don't want to hear from you again until you figure out how to act like an adult. She stood there for a moment, glaring at me, before finally storming out. After Jacqueline stormed out, I thought that would be the end of it for a while. She'd sulk, maybe complain to my parents, but eventually she'd figure out I wasn't going to back down. I was wrong. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but something told me to pick up. Hello, is this Michelle? A woman's voice asked. Yeah. Who's this? This is Marcia Dawson. I'm a lawyer. I represent a client who has recently expressed concern about certain financial matters involving your family. Do you have a moment to discuss them? I froze. A lawyer? What financial matters? I can't go into detail over the phone, she said, her tone overly polite. But it involves financial contributions you've made to your sister, Jacqueline, and her family. Specifically, your use of those contributions. Would you be willing to come to my office for a discussion? I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing with possibilities, none of them good. Had Jacqueline taken out a loan in my name? Was she using my information for something shady? Or was this a desperate attempt to guilt me into giving her money again? Who's your client? I finally asked. There was a brief pause. I'm afraid I can't disclose that right now, but I assure you, this is not a lawsuit against you. It's more an investigation. Against my better judgment, I agreed to a meeting. Curiosity got the better of me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than just Jacqueline being herself. When I walked into Marcia Dawson's office the next day, I wasn't sure what to expect. But as soon as I sat down, she dropped a bombshell. The client I'm representing is Kevin, she said, pushing a folder across the desk toward me. I blinked, taken completely by surprise. Kevin, why would he need a lawyer? Marcia folded her hands and watched me closely. He thinks Jacqueline's been using the money you've given her over the years inappropriately. He has reason to believe she's been hiding money from him and from you. My stomach turned. Hiding money? What do you mean? She opened the folder, revealing copies of bank statements, receipts, and what looked like screenshots of text messages. He suspects that Jacqueline has been taking your financial contributions and funneling them into a separate account. Based on what he found, she may have been using the money for gambling and other personal expenses instead of supporting her family. I stared at the documents in disbelief. You're saying all those times I helped her with bills, with her kids' school stuff, that money never went to them? Marcia nodded solemnly. It seems that way. Kevin discovered this recently and came to me because he didn't know what to do. He didn't want to involve you at first, but given the circumstances, he thought you should know. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Jacqueline had been playing me all along, taking money I thought was going to help her family and blowing it on who knows what. I didn't know whether to feel angry, betrayed, or just plain stupid for not seeing it sooner. Does Kevin have proof? I asked, my voice tense. Marcia nodded and pushed the folder closer to me. Take a look for yourself. I leafed through the documents. There were transfers from my account to Jacqueline's, matching the times I'd helped her with emergencies. Then there were withdrawals from her account. Large sums going to a separate account in her name. I saw transactions from that account, online gambling sites, expensive restaurants, and even a few hotel stays. The secret account, the gambling, the money you've been wasting while I've been breaking my back trying to help you. You're a joke, Jacqueline. She started to shout, but I didn't let her finish. Here's the thing, I said, cutting her off. You have used me for the last time. I'm done helping you. I'm done covering for you. If Kevin leaves you, that's on you. And if you try to drag me into this mess again, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what you've been up to. I hung up before she could answer. My hands were shaking, but it felt good to finally say what I'd been holding in for years. The fallout didn't last long. The next day, Kevin called me. "Did Jacqueline call you?" he asked, his voice careful. "Yes," I said. "She wasn't happy." "Did something happen?" He hesitated before saying, "I confronted her about the gambling and the hidden account. She admitted some of it, but she's still trying to make it sound like it's no big deal." "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm fine," he said, though he didn't sound it, "but I'm tired of making excuses for her. The kids deserve better." Hearing him say that hit me harder than I expected. I knew things were bad between them, but this felt like the beginning of the end. "Whatever you decide to do, you have my support," I said. "Thank you," he replied quietly. "And I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve the way we treated you at Christmas. I should have said something sooner." We talked for a while, and when we hung up, I felt a strange sense of closure. Jacqueline had burned every bridge with me, but Kevin and the kids, they weren't my enemies. And if he was brave enough to stand up to her, I wouldn't hold a grudge. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jacqueline wasn't done making trouble. A few weeks later, I received a text message from Kevin. It was short, just 3 words. "We're leaving today." I called him immediately, and he explained that he and the kids were moving to another state. While Jacqueline was out of town on a business trip, which I assumed was just another excuse for gambling. He packed up their things, hired a moving van, and left. "I just couldn't stay any longer," he said quietly. "I can't keep pretending this is normal." "What about the rent and everything?" I asked, genuinely curious as to how he was doing it. There was a pause before he admitted, "I was hoping you could help me with that, just for a little while." "I hate to ask, but say no more," I interrupted. "I'll cover it." So yeah, I ended up helping him and the kids, but for the first time in years, it didn't feel like I was being used. It felt like I was finally doing the right thing. Jacqueline, as expected, went completely crazy when she got back and found the house empty. She called me, ranting and raving about how I'd turned Kevin against her and ruined her life. I let her vent for a while before saying, "Maybe if you spent less time gambling and more time being a wife and mother, this wouldn't have happened. But, hey, good luck with that." Then I hung up. Kevin is doing well now. He's found a steady job, the kids are settling into their new school. And he's finally starting to feel like he's back in control of his life. As for Jacqueline, I hear she's still blaming everyone but herself. But honestly, it's not my problem anymore. So there's your happy ending, if you can call it that. Thank you for watching. For more videos like this, remember to like and subscribe.